Hey VC, it's Gary again, back all too soon. Doing something different today, and there's not much visual to this one because I don't have that much to show. No vinyl. Thought I might do something a little different today, primarily because this was I'm here to probably reminisce about a concert I went to, actually. And the weird thing is I don't go to concerts anymore. I was crazy going to them in the 70s and the 80s, and pretty much stopped in the 80s, choosing instead to, well, for one thing, as close to New York City as I live, 15, 20 minutes away, I don't go into the city, and I haven't for years. Last time I went in the city, more than a decade ago, and it was, I think the last time I went to the city was to see Oregon, the band Oregon, perform in New York. But I choose, and have for years, to kind of save my money, and to me it's better to buy recordings. You got, recording forever. A concert lasts 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever. So unless you're heavily into somebody, like it was great for me to see Oregon, I kind of chose to save my money, spend it on recordings. And the last concert I actually went to, which was a fairly unique situation, and I'm wondering if anybody ever had this happen to them. Probably not. I had to look it up in the internet for the date. I actually have a little pamphlet that was handed out at the concert, and I still have it, and I kept it. But I don't know where it's packed away in my boxes from when I moved 2 years ago. But September 15th, 2011, which was a Saturday, I'm sure, I saw an advertisement, oddly enough, in an email, for something called the Equinoxygen Festival in New Jersey, held on a college campus in one of there's several buildings there, and it was hell even trying to find out where the auditorium was, where the concert was held, which stage it was on, because it was all the way in the back of various buildings. Weird location. But it's a college, got all of 6 or 7 minutes from where I was living at the time, from my old home. And it was advertised basically, and this goes to show you something about the U.S. before I get on my high horse here. I found about this concert. I'm on an email list from for a lot of electronic music for a mail order internet kind of based distribution company that does primarily electronic music, and I think they're out of the Netherlands or New Zealand or someplace nowhere near the U.S., that's for sure. And their whole focus is on electronic music, and they sell CDs through the mail and send them through the anywhere in the world. And oddly enough, I found about this festival happening all of 10 minutes from my house from this particular mailing list. From this, like I said, from this place, I think it was in the Netherlands. So odd that they would mention it, but they're aware, I guess, that their mailing list went out all over the world. So, of course, naturally, I didn't find out about it from a local New Jersey newspaper, from anything local in New Jersey or in the United States at all. I found out about this concert through a mailing list from the friggin' Netherlands, if you could imagine that. So that might explain what happened, Anyway, went down and I bought a couple tickets because I was attempting to get a friend to come along, somebody that was adventurous musically, somebody that was willing to listen to just about anything. But in the end, she ended up not coming, and I ended up going by myself. And I didn't know most of the artists involved. I had heard of 2 of them. But because this was an 8 or 9 hour concert for $25 in advance, I figured, how can I go wrong? 10 minutes from my house, there's no way I can't go. On a Saturday, I was off work. 2 people I had heard of before. A guitarist named John Durant, who has, or had at the time, at least a handful of CDs, because I had one, and I don't even know how I came across him. I had at least one of his CDs, primarily electronic guitar, played through guitar synthesizer. I had never seen him, so I wouldn't know what he looked like. which figures into the story later. So him I had heard of, and I had a recording by him. And there was another guy, Neil Knapp, N-A-P-P-E, who Carm may have heard of. In the late 80s, very, very, very briefly, there was this, when New Age music started, there was this electronic-oriented label called Audion. And they didn't last long. But they had releases by Larry Fast, who was Synergy, who was established at the time. Even Anthony Phillips. Anthony Phillips is one of the guys really that invented the acoustic-oriented New Age music, as far as I'm concerned, despite the fact that he's a founding member of Genesis, and I'm going to do a video on him. There was a few people that were already established in the electronic music field that recorded for this new label, Audion. And one of the people, and it was new to me, and it turns out I think this, pretty sure it was his first album, was this guy Neil Knapp, who recorded an album called July. And unfortunately, I picked it up on cassette, and I may have picked it up a year or two after it came out, and the label really didn't last long, and I really wanted and should have bought the CD, except I didn't see the CD around, to my regret. And I tried to dig it out. I didn't keep, actually, when I moved, I tossed hundreds of cassettes. I kept whatever I could fit in one little clear storage container thing that has maybe 100 cassettes in there, and most of that is stuff I recorded myself, my own music at home, just fooling around, that I certainly didn't want to toss. There are a handful of cassettes in there that I kept that are pre-recorded things by other artists. I'm sure I kept that Neil Knapp July cassette somewhere. That was the only album he came out with, I think, to date. I knew nothing about Neil Knapp, but I bought the cassette. Again, electronic guitar. He uses a lot of drum machine on there, and some of it gets fairly aggressive, almost rock-like at times. But it was really well done. I could still listen to it, no doubt about it. If you're interested, I just found out today two things. Neil Knapp, one of the reasons that he was performing at this concert was because he's from New Jersey. I didn't know that until today. I went looking around to get some information before I recorded this video, and found out that Neil Knapp is a New Jersey native. And I remember at the time in that concert it mentioned that this was his first live performance since the late 80s. When the July album came out, I guess he went out and did a little bit of touring behind it, and for whatever reason stopped touring. And this performance in September of 2011 was the first live performance he did in the late 80s. Which would have been around a 20-year period at that point, or even more than 20 years. And that I didn't know until after I got to the concert, as far as his lack of performance in all those years. I didn't know that he was from New Jersey. And it was interesting because the concert, well, I got there at 11 a.m., concert started at 12, and I stayed for the whole thing. There were some breaks in there. But the incredible thing was now you have to realize, this is 15 minutes outside of New York City. I don't expect a lot of people in New Jersey to be into this music. I expected there to be more people there than were there. I walked in, granted, I got there as soon as they opened the doors pretty much, but I had seen people coming in and out. And what I didn't know is those people were mainly the performers. I walked in, got my hand stamped like you do at a club so that you can leave and take a break and get some air outside when they took breaks. They took like an hour and a half dinner break, and every once in a while a 20-minute break. You go out and get some air. And I walked in, took a look up, and there's, maybe 2 or 3 people sitting. There's nobody there. Nobody in this auditorium. And it was almost like the kind of thing you see in colleges. All the seats are on like an incline or decline, whatever you call that. So it's not flat. All good seats, kind of like the theater thing. It probably fits a few hundred people maybe. Really nice little stage. You see lots of equipment up there, and there was nobody there. And I thought, well, everybody's coming closer to when the concert starts, which was an hour later. Eventually, the concert starts. There's nobody there. Guy comes on stage. There's a lot of... I've never seen so many laptops. There's a lot of guys that... This is all extremely, extremely experimental music. Electronic music. there was one duo of guys that played standard keyboard synthesizers that almost didn't fit in because they played stuff that almost had a dance beat to it. And those were the only guys almost that kind of skewed along towards a say commercial thing, but conventional music almost. So Neil Knapp, when he got up, he had the drum machine going, so there was almost a rockish energy to his thing too, but it was very electronic. But the first band comes on, they played about I think about a half hour each. They would get up there. Next band's equipment would already be set up. It was very good logistically worked out. And people are coming in. When I say people are coming in, I'm talking one or two people at a time, and that's it. And I remember when I went to go take my first break, I go outside and I come back in during one of the breaks in performance. I'm the only person that sat there and watched that whole thing, including the musicians involved. I stayed there to the bitter end. I didn't miss a minute of the music. But when I came back in, I walk up to the desk and show the lady my stamp, and she's like, "Oh, don't worry about it," because there was nobody there. She could recognize the people that had come in with tickets or paid there, because I don't think there were 5 people in the whole time that paid. And I was just so incredibly discouraged by this. If nobody in Jersey digs it, I was 15 minutes outside of New York City, where you think anything goes. You think that there would be people, all they have to do is get on the George Washington Bridge and they'd be, in 10 minutes, they would be this look, maybe not even 10 minutes. However, there were a couple people in the audience. A couple. One of them I noticed was this, say, older guy my age, with a very young guy. And I'm like, wow, this guy is awful young to be into this kind of music. And I didn't know what the relationship was with this older man. Eventually, the concert goes on, and what happened was, much later in the concert, was something that happened pretty much the entire concert, and that is the couple people that are scattered in the audience watching the musicians play. Eventually, would get up when a performance was over of a musician they were watching, slowly walk down to the stage, get on the stage, and start to play. In other words, everybody that I was sitting with that was in the audience were actually the other performers. Very discouraging, because I thought at one point that there were maybe 8 people there watching, and it turns out that 7 of them are performers, and I'm the only one. And it got to the point that although the musicians, I'm sure, didn't know each other, they probably got introduced behind stage or when they were doing sound checks and setting up their equipment. Some of the musicians on stage are looking at me like, who's this guy? Because I was literally the only one there. I think there was maybe 3 exceptions. That was the only person there that sat there through the whole thing that didn't get up and play. And people began to look at me like, what's this guy? Yeah, I don't know if they thought maybe I was a critic writing about it, but I was the only one there that sat through the whole thing. There was about 3 people in a corner that I noticed that stayed for about 2 hours, that didn't get up and play. So they were regular listeners. But they came, and they even left in mid-performance at one point and came back and sat down for a little while and then left after about 2 hours. Kind of weird, But it didn't even seem like they were there to see the specific musician that they were watching. They just kind of wandered in. And they left after a couple hours. But I'm still watching this guy, this older guy my age with this young guy, and I'm thinking, wow, this young kid is pretty hip to some pretty wild stuff. And eventually, just like the other audience member viewers, eventually this man and this young boy get down after a performance, walk toward the stage, and then get up on the stage. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was John Durant, one of the players, who, even though I had his CDs, he didn't have any photos of himself in there, so I had no idea what he looked like. And the young man he was with was no less than his son. And no, they didn't go there to watch. They went there to perform. So I got increasingly discouraged because everybody I thought that was there to see the concert turned out to be a performer. Everybody. With the exception of those 3 people that I mentioned that stayed for maybe 2 hours. And when Neil Knapp played, he had a small group of people that arrived, maybe 4 or 5 people, I don't even know if it's that many, that arrived just before he played, stayed for his performance, and then left. And it was obvious they were there for him. What I didn't know, and I always wondered how that worked out, but what I didn't know at the time was that Neil Knapp lives in New Jersey, and these were probably, I guess people that knew him or casually knew him, or simply because he was more of a local guy. Maybe he had gotten the word out at that point on Facebook or something about his performance, and a few people that were only interested in him went down to see him play. But apart from a few people for Neil Knapp, I was it, and I stayed for the whole thing, and it was, I want to say a disaster, but I felt so bad for the guy that arranged it. I felt so bad for the musicians. About the only, well, I don't even say this is saving grace. They all were very smart. They had merchandise tables, and they set up, and they had their stuff for sale, and there literally wasn't one band there that played that I didn't like. And had I known that, I would have probably brought a fistload of money with me to buy. A lot of these CDs were things that you couldn't get otherwise. These are fairly not well known people that don't necessarily even record on a regular basis for a lot of labels. But anyway, it was hard for me to choose what to buy, and there was this one group called MEM1, MEM1, and that was a husband and wife team. These are very interesting. The husband performed actually only on using a laptop, processing electronics through a laptop. His wife plays cello, but like an extreme version of David Darling, if you're familiar with his electric cello playing, it was extremely processed. I mean, very processed, so it didn't really sound like a cello. And so she was processing her cello sound, and he was adding in on his laptop various other sounds, and I think additionally processing her. And there was a third person there that I don't remember what he did. I think he was doing electronics as well, but I don't recall that he played a keyboard. I think he might have been on a laptop as well. They were very. I was impressed by them. So this is one of the CDs I bought by this. It was MEM1 and Stephen Vitello. This is called Age of Insects. This is really out there stuff. But this is an interesting little, I guess, a privately released CD, because it's not even a full set. It's just like in an envelope. Limited edition of 200. And I bought 2 copies, so there's only another 198 out there. And I bought a copy to give to my friend that I wanted to go to the concert. And when I gave it to her, now she's not a musician, but she's pretty much up to listen to anything. She's listening to ethnic music and traditional Indian music and electronic music and stuff. I gave her this CD, and she did not dig it. I gave her a copy as well. She did not dig it. It was even too far out for her. There's no noticeable instrumental sounds on here besides the fact that she plays, the woman plays cello. But this husband and wife team, they're fantastic, and they play. I believe they're from the West Coast, and they play. They're not on Amazon, but they do release their own stuff. This particular label, I went on the site to make sure that it was still up and running. There's a site called Dragons with an S, iRecordings.com. DragonsIRecordings.com. And they don't have this one, but I did see the website is still very much active and alive, and the group is listed on there. And I'm sorry, I can't. I could probably, or can I find their name without putting you guys on hold for too long? The husband and wife team, they're just so good. MEM1 is the group, and I have the site up, but Mark and Laura Cettilia, Cetilia, is their names. And wild stuff, just wild, cool stuff. This is such a weird day for me. like I said, the musicians kept on looking at me like, who is this guy? Is he going to get up on stage? And if he's not going to get up on stage, why is he here? It was almost like a private concert that the musicians gave for each other. And there were so few people in the audience that, and especially this group did it. This husband and wife team did it, and they were very nice. They could have packed up and gone home when they were done playing. They played fairly early in the day, but I think they took a look out and they saw how few people were there. And they very nicely sat in the audience and watched the rest of the performers do their thing. And gave them applause and everything. And not even all the musicians did that. Some of the musicians went as soon as their performance was over. Now, during that day, I also bought another CD by this guy. But I got to tell you, the interesting thing was, in between, when the bands would go off, there was some shuffling around of equipment and some minor setting up of equipment. And there would be about 10 or 15 minutes between the group's performances. And I saw this bulky guy, tough-looking guy. If anybody knows what John Cage looked like, the composer John Cage, this guy immediately struck me as looking just like John Cage, except maybe a slightly bulkier version of John Cage. And he was assisting many of the groups set up their audio stuff. And I thought, oh, this guy's an audio engineer. But I'll be damned if he doesn't look like a composer. He had that serious... If you know what John Cage looks like, if you've ever seen a serious music composer, doesn't look like a pop artist. Looks like a serious composer. That's what this guy looked like. And I thought, God, this guy does not look like an audio engineer to me. Well, sure enough. Eventually, he gets on stage and starts playing synthesizer. Stuff knocked me out. Absolutely fantastic. Turned out to be a guy named Richard Lainhart. I had never heard of Richard Lainhart. But as soon as he was done playing, I quickly ran out and bought at least one of the CDs that he had up for sale. And I bought this because this particular one really struck me because it was recorded in 1974 on a Moog synthesizer. And this was, say, fairly early in his career. I wouldn't say fairly early in his career, but it was certainly one of his earlier albums. Now, the interesting thing... Well, anyway, I dug this. And after listening to it a bit, I decided I needed some more Richard Lainhart. So I actually got this. I'm pretty sure I bought this off Amazon, which was, I believe this was also something that was up for sale at that concert, and I saw it there, and I went for it. And this was a more recent. Oops, almost dropped it there. This was a more recent recording of his. So damn dark in here, I can't even read it. Forgive me for a minute. All music performed and recorded by Richard Lainhart. Richard. Anyway, the dates on here, they have the dates of pieces that range from 1975 to 1989. I don't know. I'm guessing that's when the pieces were recorded, though they may have been written at that time and recorded later. I think they were recorded then. But this is a 2 CD set, and I actually got this off of Amazon. No small feat for such a, I hate to say it, obscure composer. But electronic keyboards, pretty out there, but really great. Every time I even see the CD, I want to hear it. And it's 2 discs, so there's a lot of music on here. And the first one that I bought, that one on the Moog synthesizer, was actually quite a short disc, which is what set me running for more of his. And the interesting thing was that, eventually this guy that I thought was just an audio technician, engineer, goes up on stage, plays this beautiful set of music. And sadly, I started taking a look at some of the history, obviously the musicians that I had seen that day, what was up on the internet, etc. Well, this was September, as I mentioned. September, was it 15th, I said? Shortly after that concert and my discovery of Richard Lainhart, he went into the hospital and was diagnosed with, I believe, cancer, and they started giving him treatment. He died. And that was really a downer for me because I just discovered him. I was even going to look him up on the internet and send him a supportive letter of how much I was just getting into his music and starting to appreciate it. He died on December 30th, 2011. which is all of 2.5 months after I saw him play live. Very sad. And it's great when a composer, when somebody that does obscure music like this, get some appreciation before they pass away. And I have to tell you, ever since then, this has happened to numerous artists with me, but maybe because I actually saw him, and I saw him 2 months before he passed, it's been so hard for me to listen to this album, to the 2 CDs I have by him since then. And this is such good stuff. I just have to overcome that somehow. But it's so hard. I think it would have been hard even if I had just discovered him a couple months prior to his death, but to have actually seen him, and he seemed like such a nice guy. He was so helpful to the other groups in setting up their equipment. And here he is, a composer himself. The odd thing was how in my mind, he looked much like John Cage. Looking up on the internet, he has a Wikipedia entry. And he was not an old man. He was born in 1953, and he died 2011. So, he had more time, But he was a New York guy. Came from New York, was somebody that was associated with synthesizers and electronic music from those modular, all the way back to the beginning of the modular synthesizers and all that kind of stuff. And he was from Vestal, New York. He studied in New York, apparently. He worked with director Nicholas Ray on one of Nicholas Ray's final movies, but they didn't use, sadly enough, the score that he wrote. But he was working during his education with and associated with John Cage. And if you're really familiar with the obscure electronic early serious composers, he assisted and performed with many people, including John Cage, David Tudor, David Berman, a few of those people hardcore fans of early electronic music would know. And it was, so apparently his first solo recording came out in '87, even though that recording that I showed was from '74, so a lot of these things were in the archive that he released much later. He got commissions, by the Electronic Music Foundation. It was he was, I guess, fairly well known amongst a small group of hardcore people, and I sadly only learned about him after his passing. And I tell you, boy, if you like, let's say, avant-garde electronics, this isn't as difficult as that Mem 1 that I showed, which is really out there. I love it, but it's out there. This is a little more, there's no rhythms going on. But if you're going to get one of his discs, it's probably a real good one to get, because it's got 2 discs. It's got a lot of music, that really slowly, beautifully unfolds. It's called 10,000 Shades of Blue. I didn't look before I recorded this to see if it's still available on Amazon, but he actually had a bunch of things on Amazon. I was surprised. But that was a weird night, because nobody ever, even later in the day, additional people didn't come. There were, like I said, a few people there to see Neil Knapp perform, which I didn't know Neil Knapp was a New Jersey-in. And there was about 3 other people, like I said, that came together in a group and stayed for about 2 hours. Apart from that, I was it, and the other musicians that kindly sat there after their performance and watched the other guys perform. It was like a private concert, and oddly enough, it was very uncomfortable. I felt bad for those guys. I haven't seen another concert come, certainly not in that area, from the promoter who put it together. He certainly didn't do anything wrong. But I was kind of sad to see that there was such a lousy state of affairs for anything that's non-conventional music, not just electronic music. And I really thought there would be, I thought I was going to be in a room full of college kids who, because boy, if this were the 60s and 70s, there would have been college kids there who probably are familiar with this music because they're smoking dope to it all the time. And it amazed me that in a fairly well-known, fairly large college like that, didn't have a built-in audience for this thing. As it was, I don't think there was a single person here that attended the school. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Oddest experience I've ever had in a concert. I discovered some great musicians. I sure wish Richard Lainhart were still with us. Make it easier for me to enjoy his music, because it's hard as hell now. I have these discs loaded into my computer, and every time I go to play them, I hesitate and I stop. And one of these days I'm going to get back to it and possibly grab up everything else that I can find by him. So, I don't know my real reason for doing this video. Hopefully it's interesting to somebody. I mean, I do artists that a lot of people would consider obscure, but these are artists that I don't think anybody's heard of that views my videos even. But it was more of the experience. By far the oddest concert experience I've ever had, and it was the last concert I ever went to. And it just, I felt, like I said, I felt bad for the musicians. And I felt bad especially that there aren't more people that are getting into this, because face it, $25 or $35 to get into a concert that goes for 8 hours is nothing. These people are paying, $200 to go see Madonna lip sync, so whatever. Okay, guys, thought I would tell a tale today instead of necessarily rifle through my collection. Found about a bunch more of the Mark Isham CDs after doing my Mark Isham video yesterday. Found out even more CDs that I had by him, mostly film soundtracks. No shortage of them. Okay, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope everybody's having a great week. This went longer than I wanted it to, but at least it's not an hour. I will see you all soon. Bye.